Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really honor and privilege to be here. I think these maybe a couple of days have been some of the best of my life. I think I met so many great, wonderful people and also fell in love with your town. So thank you for being so hospitable and so wonderful. And my apologies if I scared some people about the artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I think I was approached by so many people, they dropped their lunches and coffees and they were chasing me around, finding out. But today, actually, I'm going to reconnect back to my roots. And I think I will take you back to my own personal stories. And I grew up in Pakistan, and my family originally had our land right on the border of India and Pakistan, and it was Samana and Patiala state. And after partition, which was really terrible and very hurtful, and many people got killed, we acquired the land which was on this side of the border, and this is where we grew up. And growing up, my family was very well off, and we have many Christians living in our neighborhood. And often those Christians were very poor, and we had the tradition that unlike the slackers here in North America, the back home Christians actually fasted 40 days. So I would fast with them 10 days and then the 30 days with the rest of the Muslims. So we were really that close, but they were really poor. And often they will come for help to my father, who always stepped up and helped them, provided funding for the church. And one day they came, and being a young kid, I always watched these conversations. And they said to my father, our church bell has broken down again. You generously supported us, but it no longer works. Can you help? So my father said, how much is going to cost to fix this? And they said, what, 30,000 rupees? And that was a lot of money. So my father said, what if we buy a new one? And he says, there's no way we can afford. So he said, well, here's a check. Let's go and buy a new one. And then he called his sons and asked us to go and collect that bell. And I thought, well, Father is really clever. He's going to sell this bell and get some copper, some money out of it. So it's a good business deal. So we went happily and collected that bell, brought it back. It was the afternoon. He was pacing in the lawn. He says, do you have it, son? Yes, Father. Where is it? It's on the truck. He says, go and take it. I just bought a piece of land, and I'd like you to bury this bell in that land. And it was kind of shock. But of course, I knew that if I asked the question, somebody going to get hurt real bad. So quietly we went along. It was May 21st, a hot day, and sun was scorching hot, and there were these people digging up a big hole. So we stood there for 4 or 5 hours, and remember, it's the shoveling, right? So they shoveled, hand shoveled, the bell was eventually buried, came home, and the sun was setting down. And my father is still pacing. He says, well, what happened to the bell? I said, Dad, we buried it. He says, did you bury it properly? He says, well, Dad, it's a bell. We dug a hole, and we put it there, and we covered it up. He said, sit down. Sit down. And I thought, uh-oh, somebody going to get hurt. And at that time, there was the call for prayers from mosque. And he said, who is calling for prayers? I said, it's Muazzin, it's the mullah. And he said, so he's calling people to come to mosque. What will happen if he dies? I said, we'll wash his body, we'll give him, proper burial, we'll bury him in the grave. And he said, oh, you will do this to your muazzin or your mullah, because he calls people to mosque. Christians used to ring this bell to call people to come to church. Their mullah just died. And it deserved the same reverence and respect as your own mullah would. The father is actually buried next to that bell. So that really taught me something very important in my life. The purpose of life is actually life lived with a purpose. And the purpose is to serve humanity. When I started reading Quran, the only place where the word Muslim was described was a service to humanity. That's it. So I think, that really set the stage, but he was also wise. He said, go and every Friday go to mosque, and Saturday you're going to go to synagogue, and Sunday you're going to go to church. So in Karachi, we used to have a small little synagogue. Only 200 families really lived there at that time. They have moved out since then. And we will actually go and learn different things. And when I went to mosque, I learned something very important. And I think, as one of the topic that we have today is that how do material and immaterial things, they define us. And I quote one of the sayings of Imam Ali, who was the cousin as well as son-in-law of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And he said that it is not that you do not possess anything in this world, but nothing worldly should possess you. And he used to say that you are like a boat that floats in water. And this world is that water. Could be ocean, could be river. For as long as this water stays out of your boat, you will continue to float. The moment you started collecting worldly desires and worldly things into your boat, it will slow you down and eventually sink you. And I think those are really the defining moments when you go to mosque or, the places of worship and church. So I wanted to ask myself, what does really life mean? And what do I learn about life from the mosque? And I realized the Quran describes very explicitly what life and death is. It says that the earth was dead, and then after putting water into it from the skies, we made it come alive. And then it would say that look at the trees during winter times, they are actually dead. There are no butterflies fluttering their wings. There are no bees hovering around. There are no birds nesting, no fruits, no flower. The tree will be deemed as dead. And then when we looked at flowers, the flower withers away, the scent is gone, and the petals fall. That flower is dead. So actually, I learned a very important lesson. That is that we have all been endowed with unique capabilities and unique abilities. To take those abilities, to make them really work and bring them into action, this is what life is all about. So I think rather than, creating a concept of that you have to worship because we worship God because He's worthy of worship. Not because of the fear of going to hell or really the greed to get into heaven, because He's worthy of worship. So I think from that point onwards, when I learned the meanings, and then I asked when I used to go to a synagogue or my Jewish friends, I learned that our bodies are like Torah scrolls. They both contain the living words of our living God. As long as we live, that word can live in us. When we die, and then the spirit that carried the word departs from us, our bodies will still remain their sanctity. Like a worn out Torah scrolls, we bury them in the earth after we put them in casket or urn. As we lower our physical remains of the loved ones into earth, we are asked to take up spiritual legacy and make it our own. In the church, I learned Jeremiah 32:19, the great are your purposes and mighty are your deeds. Your eyes are open to the ways of all mankind. You reward each person according to their conduct and their deeds deserve. Also from the Buddhist traditions, I learned from Buddha, the long is the cycle of birth and death to the fool who does not know true path. So I think at the end of all of this, I realized that all religions were teaching me the same thing. And of course, the Christians and Jews and Muslims are all cousins. They're children of Abraham. Mind you, Muslims are the only younger ones. That's why we're rowdy and out of control. But, at the end of the day, I think I also view all of, people in different faiths, especially, I think, from the Islamic perspective. And I like to clear some concept that Islam means acceptance. And by accepting and endorsing Jesus Christ and Moses, God and the Quran lends enormous credibility to their prophecy and their teaching. Now, of course, these are the religions that were created by God. And if I am writing a scientific paper, would you expect me to reject that paper because I wrote it myself? How could God actually reject any of these faiths? And it says very, very clearly that don't clash with each other vis-a-vis your God. He is our God, and He is their God as well. He has same connection with us as He has with them. It's your actions, and your actions are your actions, and their actions are their actions. Quran did not say that Jews or Christians will anyway be punished. Quran says that you will find more closeness with Christians if they bend towards you in peace. You must reciprocate. So I think learning all of these things, I started to join the school. And of course, I was taught interesting stories. And there was a religious class as well. And I come home one day and my mother said, "What did you learn in your school?" I said, "Well, we learned about religion." She was very happy. And she said, "What did you learn?" I said, "Well, our teacher told us how Moses crossed Nile when his followers were with him and Pharaoh was chasing them." So she said, "Well, what did you learn?" I said, "Well, I think what happened was that Moses, with his followers, he first built a platoon bridge. So he was on the other side, then on his walkie-talkie, he talked to the headquarters and asked them to send some fighter jets. And there comes these 2 fighter jets with laser-guided missiles. They blew up the bridge, and he was safe." So she looked at me completely bewildered. She said, "You learned all this nonsense in your school?" And I said, "Mom, I think it happened this way. If I tell you what my teacher said, you will never believe." So I think that was a shock and awe for me. It was an eye-opener, and I really realized in school also that science is actually evidence-based. It's experimentally driven with an end goal, and it answers certain specific questions. Studying philosophy, I learned that no definitive answers are really looked. It's very open-ended. And it helps us prepare our mind for intelligence, and the social and as well as emotional intelligence. And that helps us self-recognition as well as the recognition of the almighty powers, the great. And then I looked at the theory of evolution. I thought that, well, it makes perfect sense, but I have never seen a monkey comes out of the zoo and says, "Hey, I am your next politician, president," or something like this. It hasn't happened. Yes, the process is slow. It could have taken billions of years, but for God's sake, a billion years ago, a monkey that's tried to convert must have showed up. So these are all naive questions. I said, I can't take 10 coins and I numbered them 1 to 10. The probability is really very, very rare that every time I will be able to pick up 2 of these coins at the same time. Then I thought about, the awe, and I'll tell you an interesting story is that I was really fascinated by these bees, and I will dig up a small little hole and stick my head into the hive, and they think that I was part of the hive, and often they will leave some honey on my nose. But the idea was that, I thought they don't have GPS system. They go from place to place, collect flowers and nectar, but the honey tastes the same at the end. And who has taught them this remarkable engineering principles to construct this hive, which is masterpiece? So I think each and everything that you looked around was really awe. And I said, okay, if the evolution really persists, but what about things, the galaxies? How is it possible the Earth, if it was even a few millimeters larger than it is, it would not have been able to sustain its environment? And the rotation, if it is actually 1/100th of a second slower or faster, everything will topple. So even if you can think that the animals have evolved, how could this actually entire universe will be put together? Then I looked at the theory of light, and I said, we don't even know what the speed of light really is. We just calculated roughly. The string theory didn't make much sense to me. And then I think everything turns out is that it's just a black hole. So, you think... We only have 0.03% of knowledge from science and physics. Anybody who tells me that physics explain everything, I think that really is, turns out to be, again, another hoax for me. So I think, coming down to somebody asked that if anything exists like the God's concept, if it exists, how come my senses do not conceptualize it? And it turns out that, why is it that if I can't see God, I can feel God, I can touch God? And then it reminds me of the great-grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is Imam Jafar Sadiq. He's the 6th Imam of the Shia faith. Then he was asked the same question, and he said to this person, do you know that the blood actually circulates in your body? This is almost 1,200 years ago. Blood circulates in your body like a circuit. Do you ever see it? Do you feel it? He says, no. He said, do you know there are small, tiny little particles in your body? He's referring to cells. They are born and die in your body, and they are more than the sand particles on the sand. Do you see them? Do you realize them? Do you recognize them? And he said that even the statue that you worship, do you know that there is still movement in this? So I think, all of these things that our senses cannot conceptualize, we really believe that great being or the entity is out there, that is a smart design that has allowed us, given us the wisdom to be able to really discover it. So the purpose of creation of human beings is for us to recognize God and so that he could be discovered. And I think all these religions and faiths brings it all to the same level whereby we are able to really reach out and even think. So I think, I tell my atheist friends that if it turns out that there is no God, nothing will happen to me, but somebody gonna get hurt real bad. So I think when you also see scientific experiments, they are actually done in the Holy Book, in the Quran. The birth of Christ itself, is the first experiment of human cloning. Prophet Solomon, he would say that anybody can bring the actual, the pulpit of Queen of Sheba in a blink of an eye. That's actually Star Trek stories. So everything that in the modern sciences has been, and the idea is to really open your mind to think. And I think the religion and science, this is where they come together. They allow you to ponder and be awed and be actually excited. So, and in closing, I would like to really say that I can write the best essay. And one of the reporters asked me that, you've got very strong faith about science as well as religion. I said, I can write the best manuscript, I can write the best paper, but if you take this light off, I cannot actually read my own paper, my own writing, my own intellectual contributions. So my faith is that light that provides true meaning to my knowledge. Thank you very much.
Naweed, thank you very much for taking us through a glimpse of your personal life story and bringing it to bear upon this panel on wonder and awe. And I'm inclined to add another term to the introductory character of the panel: wonder and awe and humor, or more directly, laughter. And I wanted to pursue that with you as a question before you all intervened. I sense that humor is an interesting rhetorical device, and I know you're a skillful speaker, and you can move your audience to relax and then engage what it is that you're saying. But I sense as a physician and a healer that humor is something more than simply a rhetorical device. Could you address that or speak a bit more?
I think it's a great question. And I really think that one of the most important things that we all have to do from the religious perspective, we need to really learn to laugh at ourselves. So I think, just laugh at yourself, then the other people become really relaxed as well. But it also really provides it makes the conversation a lot easier. I think Caroline is going to mention, as soon as she mentioned, race, everybody's tentacles go up. So I think we need to really be able to laugh and relax ourselves. I think the sense of humor. I will cite the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Imam Ali said many times, I have never seen anyone smile so much than the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Excellent. Please.
I agree. I how do you get, I'm always thinking about how do you get people to lean into a conversation that's hard? You know, how do you get them to lean in? What's really, you know, we talk, for me, I talk a lot and think a lot about our common humanity as well, like everybody else is here. And I believe we can't get there unless we deal with the hard stuff. It has to be authentic, it has to be real, right? I'm interested in reconciliation and redemption. How do you get people, when I look at people and I say, I'm gonna talk to you about race, which I'm gonna do in about a minute, right? Right, and how do I get you to not shut down and say, well, you know, I can laugh at it too. I can laugh, because I'm a human being. We are funny. We kind of crazy. We kind of a lot of things, right? So for me, humor is really powerful, and it's accessible to everyone, right? I'll stop talking.
And sometimes, please.
Well, us native folks are very stoic.
Very stoic.
No, we laugh a lot. We laugh and laugh and laugh. But I think the other piece that is emerging, certainly for me, but I think in general, because of where we perceive ourselves to be, is vulnerability. Yes. To be able to express vulnerability is a great unifying piece that hopefully we can begin to cultivate in the good ways. Vulnerability versus forcing another human being to be your therapist on the spot. But vulnerability is so powerful for us in this connection.
I love that. Thank you all. And I just want to say, being vulnerable. So I'm married to this guy. We teach together. And the best thing is his sense of humor. And especially when we teach, because students are kind of like just watching two people teach together. But he will always laugh. He makes us all laugh. And it makes the class just rise up. So clearly humor is fantastic, but when you have a partner who has a great sense of humor, it's all to the good. Thank you, John.
Yeah. Good work, Mary Evelyn.
Well, this stern